The day Earth changed forever started like any other. The morning news talked about weather and politics, children went to school, and adults worried about their daily problems. No one knew that high above the planet's atmosphere, something was watching. The first sign came at exactly noon GMT. Every screen on Earth, phones, computers, televisions, billboards, went dark at the same moment. When they came back on seconds later, they all showed the same thing. A strange symbol that looked like flowing water made of light. In the United Nations building in New York, world leaders gathered in emergency meetings. Military commanders rushed to their posts. Scientists worked frantically to understand what was happening. But no one had any answers. Then the message came. We are the Watchers. A voice spoke through every device capable of producing sound. The voice was neither male nor female, young nor old. It simply was. We have observed your species for 300 of your years. We have seen enough. You will now listen. In a small control room at NASA, Dr. Reed watched his instruments go crazy. Something massive had just appeared in orbit around Earth, something that hadn't been there seconds before. The screen showed an object larger than any human-made satellite, its surface shifting like mercury under sunlight. We maintain order in this galaxy, the voice continued. We have watched your wars, your destruction of your own planet, your violent tendencies. You advance too quickly without wisdom. You build weapons before you build understanding. This cannot continue. The world held its breath. In London, a mother held her child closer. In Beijing, a teacher stopped mid-sentence, his chalk frozen against the blackboard. In Rio de Janeiro, crowds gathered in the streets, looking up at the sky with fear and wonder. General Stone stood in the Pentagon's command center, his hands gripping the edge of a desk so hard his knuckles turned white. On his screens, more objects appeared in orbit, smaller vessels, spreading out like a net around the planet. Your species will halt all space exploration immediately, the voice commanded. Your technological advancement will cease. This is not a request. This is not a negotiation. This is the way it must be, for the safety of all. World leaders tried to respond. They sent messages in every language, through every possible channel. They promised cooperation, asked for dialogue, demanded explanations. The Watchers ignored them all. Hours passed. The ships remained in orbit, silent sentinels against the stars. Earth's most powerful weapons remained locked away. Everyone knew using them would be suicide against beings with this level of technology. In his private office, the United Nations Secretary General drafted a message of peace and cooperation. Before he could send it, the Watchers spoke again. To demonstrate our resolve, we will now disable your most advanced military installations. This is a warning. Resistance will bring consequences. Across the globe, military bases went dark. Missile silos sealed themselves shut. Aircraft carriers lost power and drifted in the oceans. The message was clear. Earth's most powerful defenses meant nothing to these beings. As night fell across different time zones, people huddled in their homes, watching the news, calling loved ones, praying to their gods. Scientists worked through the night, trying to understand the alien technology. Military leaders made plans they knew might be useless. Politicians argued about how to respond. But in a secure room deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Stone made a different kind of plan. They think they know humanity, he told his small team of trusted officers. They think they can just arrive and take over, like we're children to be punished. They've studied us for 300 years, but they missed something important. He looked at each person in the room, his eyes hard with determination. They missed what happens when humans are pushed too far. And they're about to learn. That night, as the alien ships cast their shadows on the earth below, humanity began to change. Not with a bang, not with a whimper, but with a quiet, deadly resolve. The Watchers thought they were preventing a war. Instead, they were starting one. 2 weeks after the Watchers arrived, humans learned exactly what technological restriction meant. It started with the space stations. The International Space Station's crew watched helplessly as their systems shut down one by one. The emergency pods activated automatically, forcing them to return to Earth. The Watchers' monitoring stations looked like giant silver teardrops hanging in the sky. They were visible from the ground on clear nights, a constant reminder of humanity's new prison. Any attempt to launch even a weather satellite was met with immediate response. A beam of light would flash, and the rocket would simply disappear. Dr. Reed sat in his now useless NASA control room, watching old data scroll across his screens. "They're not just stopping us," he told his remaining team members. "They're pushing us backward." Around him, computers that had once guided spacecraft to distant planets now struggled to perform basic calculations. The Watchers' technology was somehow draining the processing power from every advanced system on Earth. In cities across the world, the effects spread like a disease. Traffic lights failed. Hospitals had to switch to backup generators as power grids became unstable. Internet connections slowed to a crawl. The Watchers were systematically dismantling humanity's technological infrastructure. "The global economy is collapsing," a news anchor reported, her voice shaking slightly. With international communications becoming increasingly difficult, stock markets worldwide have shut down. The World Bank estimates that within months, we may be forced to return to a pre-digital economy. People began to adapt, but not in the way the Watchers expected. In basements and hidden rooms, engineers worked with old, simple technologies that seemed to resist the aliens' interference. Mechanical devices, analog systems, things that didn't rely on advanced electronics. These became the new focus of human ingenuity. General Stone's resistance movement grew in the shadows. They discovered that older military equipment, especially mechanical weapons, remained functional. "They expect us to give up," he told his expanding network of supporters. "They think taking away our best weapons will break us. They don't understand that humans have been fighting wars since before we had electricity." In a secret workshop under an abandoned factory, Major Wells made an important discovery. She found that certain old radio frequencies could pass through the Watchers' interference. The resistance began using World War I-era equipment, modified with their new understanding of the aliens' technology. The Watchers noticed these attempts at adaptation. Their response was swift and harsh. More monitoring stations appeared in orbit. The silver teardrops multiplied until they formed a web around the planet. Their message echoed through every remaining working speaker on Earth. "Your attempts to circumvent our restrictions are noted. They will not be tolerated. Further defiance will result in direct intervention." To demonstrate their point, they targeted a small research facility in the Arctic that had been studying their technology. The building simply vanished, leaving a perfectly circular hole in the ice. No one knew if the scientists inside were dead or taken. They were simply gone. But the Watchers had made a crucial mistake. They thought fear would make humans submit. Instead, it made them angry. In hidden places around the world, people began to work together in ways they never had before. Old enemies shared secrets. Former rivals pooled resources. Humanity was uniting, not in submission, but in defiance. In his underground command center, General Stone received reports from around the world. People were fighting back in small ways, finding gaps in the Watchers' control, learning their patterns. "They think they're witnessing our decline," he told his officers. "But they're actually watching us evolve. Humans don't just survive under pressure, we transform." As the sun set on another day of restrictions, the resistance grew stronger. In workshops and basements, in old bunkers and hidden labs, humanity was changing. The Watchers thought they were watching a species bow to superior force. Instead, they were watching a spring being compressed, and soon it would release. 3 months after imposing their restrictions, the Watchers revealed their true intentions. It began with a simple announcement that echoed through the remaining working speakers. "Your population levels are unsustainable. Reduction begins now." Nobody understood what they meant until the first beam struck New York City. It wasn't an explosion or a blast, just a silent purple light that covered 10 city blocks. When it faded, the people were gone. The buildings remained untouched, but 50,000 humans had vanished in an instant. The same happened in Shanghai the next day, then Mumbai, then Cairo. Each time, the pattern was the same: a purple light, then empty streets. No bodies, no destruction, just absence. The message was clear. The Watchers weren't just controlling humanity, they were culling it. In his underground command center, General Stone slammed his fist on the table. "They're not even trying to hide it anymore," he said to his officers. "They're just removing us like we're weeds in their garden." The resistance had grown stronger, but they still couldn't stop these attacks. They could only watch and count the losses. Dr. Reed worked day and night in a hidden laboratory, studying readings from the purple light events. "There's something strange about these beams," he told his team. "They're not destroying matter, they're moving it. But where?" The question haunted him, especially when he thought about his sister who had vanished in the New York removal. The Watchers began setting up quarantine zones around major cities. Huge, invisible barriers appeared overnight, cutting off entire metropolitan areas from the outside world. Anyone who touched these barriers simply disappeared. Inside these zones, people lived under constant surveillance from floating silver orbs that recorded everything. But humans didn't accept this fate quietly. In London's quarantine zone, people discovered that the silver orbs couldn't see through lead paint. They began painting messages on walls and roofs, codes that only the resistance understood. In Tokyo's zone, citizens found that old mechanical watches still worked perfectly, allowing them to coordinate their movements without digital technology. Major Wells established a network of runners, people who carried messages between resistance cells using nothing more complex than paper and pencil. The Watchers' technology was advanced, but it couldn't read human handwriting. This old-fashioned communication system became the backbone of the resistance. Then came the day the Watchers made their biggest mistake. They targeted a refugee camp outside Paris, believing it contained only displaced civilians. But this camp was special. It was full of children who had lost their parents to the purple beams. When the removal beam struck, something changed. People watching from nearby hills saw the purple light flicker and fail. The children remained untouched. For the first time, a Watcher beam had failed to work. In his command center, General Stone received the news with grim satisfaction. "They made a crucial error," he told his staff. "They showed us that they can fail. Now we know they're not gods. They're just bullies with better weapons." The resistance spread this news using their hidden networks. Hope began to grow in the quarantine zones. If one beam could fail, others could too. People started studying the patterns of the removals, looking for weaknesses, gathering data in secret notebooks, and passing it through the runner network. Deep underground, Dr. Reed made a breakthrough. The children's brains, he explained to his team. Their neural patterns are different from adults, more flexible, more adaptable. Something about that disrupted the beam. If we can understand how. As the resistance grew stronger, the Watchers increased their pressure. More beams, more barriers, more restrictions, but they didn't understand what they were creating. Every person they removed left behind family and friends who joined the resistance. Every new restriction taught humans a new way to adapt. In the darkness of the quarantine zones, humanity was changing, not into the docile, controlled species the Watchers wanted, but into something else, something harder, smarter, and much more dangerous. The breaking point had been reached, and there was no going back. Deep beneath the Antarctic ice, where the Watchers' sensors couldn't penetrate, humans made their greatest discovery. Dr. Reed stood in a massive underground chamber, watching his team work on what looked like broken pieces of silver metal, fragments from a Watcher monitoring station that had fallen from orbit during a solar storm. The quantum field variations, he explained to General Stone, who had traveled secretly to inspect their progress. That's why their beams couldn't affect the children. Young minds produce unique quantum patterns. We've learned to copy these patterns. He pointed to a device that looked like a simple metal helmet. "With this, we can hide from their scans." The underground facility had grown over the past months. Old mining tunnels connected various chambers, each dedicated to different projects. In one room, Major Wells tested weapons that could penetrate the Watcher's barriers. In another, engineers worked on vehicles that could move without being detected. But the most important project was hidden in the deepest chamber. They called it Dead Switch, a last resort weapon that even most resistance leaders didn't know about. Only Dr. Reed and his most trusted scientists understood what they were building and the price of using it. Above ground, the resistance fed false information to the Watchers. They made sure the aliens saw what they wanted to see: humans struggling with simple machines, fighting among themselves, slowly accepting their fate. The truth was very different. "The quantum shields are ready," Major Wells reported to her team. "We can hide entire buildings from their scans now." The resistance had learned to use the Watcher's own technology against them, but they had to move carefully. Any suspicious pattern would alert their observers. In cities around the world, the resistance prepared. They stored weapons in old subway tunnels, converted abandoned buildings into hidden bases, and trained people to fight using methods the Watchers couldn't detect. Everything was done in absolute secrecy, using technology that appeared primitive but contained hidden power. Dr. Reed made another breakthrough while studying the Fallen monitoring station. "They can't track certain energy frequencies," he told his team. "Their technology is advanced, but it has blind spots. They're so focused on blocking our progress that they never considered we might find a way around their restrictions." The resistance used this knowledge to build a new communication network. They hid transmitters in old radio equipment, sending messages through frequencies the Watchers ignored. Slowly, carefully, they coordinated their plans across the globe. General Stone received regular updates in his mobile command center, which moved between hidden bases. "How many cities are ready?" he asked his staff. The answer surprised even him. More than half of Earth's major population centers had secret resistance cells, armed and waiting. But the biggest secret remained Project Dead Switch. In the deepest chamber, Dr. Reed and his team worked on something that scared even them. They had discovered that the Watcher's technology relied on stable dimensional spaces. Project Dead Switch could disrupt these spaces, but the consequences would be unpredictable. "If we use this," Dr. Reed warned General Stone, "we might save humanity, but we'll change the nature of space itself around Earth." "There's no going back from that." The general nodded grimly. They both knew it might come to that. Above ground, life continued under the Watcher's control. More people disappeared in purple beams, more restrictions were imposed. But now there was hope hidden in the darkness. Humanity had found its weapons, built its defenses, and prepared its trap. In their orbiting stations, the Watchers watched Earth's cities and saw exactly what humans wanted them to see: a species slowly accepting its fate. They didn't notice the subtle changes, the hidden preparations, the quiet determination. They thought they were watching humanity's surrender, but they were actually watching the calm before the storm. On a cold morning, 6 months after the Watchers arrived, humanity launched its first strike. The signal came through the hidden network. 3 short clicks on the old radio frequencies. Across the world, resistance cells moved into action with perfect coordination. In New York, people wearing quantum-shielded helmets walked right through the quarantine barriers. The Watchers' silver orbs didn't even notice them. In Tokyo, resistance fighters used modified World War I weapons that could shoot down the monitoring drones. Beijing's underground army emerged from hidden bunkers, carrying devices that disrupted the Watchers' energy fields. First wave successful, Major Wells reported from her command post. "They didn't see us coming." The Watchers' monitoring stations in orbit began to react, but they were confused. Their sensors showed thousands of targets appearing out of nowhere, too many to track at once. Dr. Reed watched from the Antarctic base as his quantum field generators activated worldwide. The devices created a web of interference that blinded the Watcher's most powerful scanning equipment. "They're trying to compensate," he told General Stone. "But they can't adjust fast enough. Their technology isn't designed to handle this many unexpected variables." The resistance struck the orbital stations first. Old missile silos, hidden from the Watcher's scans by quantum shields, launched their weapons. The missiles looked primitive on the outside, but carried Dr. Reed's special warheads. When they exploded, they created quantum disruption fields that tore the silver teardrops apart. In orbit, the Watcher's monitoring stations began falling one by one. The aliens finally realized what was happening, but it was too late. Their perfect network of control had too many holes, too many blind spots that humans had discovered and exploited. "They're calling for help," Dr. Reed announced, reading the data from their intercepted communications. "They're summoning their main fleet." General Stone nodded grimly. They had expected this. The Watchers wouldn't accept defeat easily. The resistance fighters moved quickly, securing key positions in every major city. They used the quantum shields to protect important buildings and infrastructure. The remaining Watcher drones tried to stop them, but their weapons passed harmlessly through the shielded humans. In London, resistance members took control of a Watcher command center. They found it empty. The aliens operated everything remotely, but the equipment inside gave them valuable data about the Watcher's technology. "They never expected us to get this far," one technician reported. "Their security systems are designed to stop advanced technology, not determine humans with simple tools." The Watchers tried to use their purple removal beams, but the quantum shields protected against those too. Each failed attempt revealed more weaknesses in their systems. Humanity had learned from months of observation, finding patterns the Watchers didn't even know existed in their own technology. Then the sky changed. Huge ships appeared in orbit, larger than cities. The Watcher reinforcements had arrived. Their message boomed across the planet. "Your resistance is unprecedented. Your punishment will be absolute. The main fleet will cleanse this world." General Stone received the reports with calm determination. "This is what we planned for," he told his officers. "They think they're coming to finish us off. Instead, they're falling into our trap." In the Antarctic base, Dr. Reed prepared Project Dead Switch for activation. The device hummed quietly, its true power hidden behind simple exterior. "Are you sure about this?" Major Wells asked him. "Using this will change everything." "They already changed everything," Dr. Reed replied, watching the massive ships descend through the atmosphere. "Now it's our turn." Above Earth, the Watcher fleet spread out in attack formation. They thought they were about to end a rebellion. They didn't realize they were about to witness something unprecedented in galactic history. Humanity's real power unleashed. The Watcher fleet filled Earth's skies like a blanket of metal clouds. Their ships were massive, each one larger than the largest human city. They positioned themselves over major population centers, their weapons powered up and ready to fire. In the Antarctic base, Dr. Reed made the final adjustments to Project Dead Switch. The device looked simple, just a metal cube sitting on a table, but inside it was the most dangerous thing humans had ever built. It could tear holes in the fabric of space itself. "If we do this, we can't undo it," Dr. Reed told General Stone. "The dimensional barriers around Earth will be permanently changed. Space itself will become unstable." The general looked at the screen showing the Watcher fleet above. "Do we have a choice?" The Watcher's message echoed across the planet. "Your defiance ends now. Surrender or face extinction." They gave humans 1 hour to respond. They thought they were being generous. They were wrong. Major Wells coordinated with resistance cells worldwide. Everyone needed to be in protected zones when Project Dead Switch activated. "The quantum shields will protect us," she explained to her teams. "Everything else, we'll have to wait and see." The Watchers started their countdown. In New York, their ships created strange patterns in the sky. In Tokyo, the air itself seemed to bend around their vessels. In London, their energy weapons began to glow. They prepared to demonstrate their power one final time. But in the depths of Antarctica, humanity prepared its own demonstration. Dr. Reed activated the first stage of Project Dead Switch. The cube began to hum, sending vibrations through the floor. On his screens, he watched as space itself began to ripple around the device. "Send the message," General Stone ordered. The resistance broadcast on all frequencies, using the Watcher's own communication channels. "Look below you. See what we've learned to do. This is your only warning." The Watchers detected the strange energy readings from Antarctica. Their sensors showed impossible things: space folding in on itself, reality starting to tear. For the first time, they felt something they had never expected to feel while dealing with humans: fear. Dr. Reed watched the power levels rise. 10 seconds to full activation, he announced. The cube was glowing now, its surface shifting between different dimensions. Around the base, reality began to blur. 5 seconds. The Watchers realized too late what was happening. They tried to target the Antarctic base, but their weapons couldn't lock on. The space around it was too distorted. They had never seen anything like this. None of their calculations had predicted humans could develop something so dangerous. "Activation," Dr. Reed said quietly, and pressed the final button. The effect was instant. Across Earth, space itself began to tear. The quantum shields protected human cities, but everywhere else, reality started to break down. The Watchers' ships found themselves caught in a web of dimensional instability. Their advanced technology, which relied on stable spacetime, began to fail. Several ships tried to escape, but the dimensional distortions followed them. Project Dead Switch wasn't just affecting Earth. It was changing space itself in an expanding sphere around the planet. The Watchers had two choices: stay and be torn apart by unstable spacetime, or retreat beyond the effect's range. "Your species is insane," the Watchers broadcast. "You would damage reality itself just to resist us." General Stone replied with a simple message: "We would do anything to be free. Leave our world, never return, and we will contain the effect. Stay, and we all face the consequences." In orbit, the Watcher ships began to turn away. They had come expecting to find a primitive species they could easily control. Instead, they had found something that scared them: a species willing to break reality itself rather than submit to control. As the massive ships retreated, Dr. Reed monitored the dimensional distortions. "We can stabilize it," he said, "but space around Earth will never be quite the same. We've changed something fundamental about our corner of the galaxy." General Stone watched the ships disappear into the distance. "We've changed something fundamental about humanity, too," he replied. "We've shown the galaxy what happens when you push humans too far." 1 year after the Watchers retreated, Earth was a different place. The sky looked strange now. Colors shifted in unusual ways where the dimensional barriers had been changed. Ships leaving the atmosphere had to navigate carefully through regions of unstable space, but humanity had adapted. They always did. Dr. Reed stood in his new laboratory, built in what used to be a Watcher monitoring station. Around him, scientists studied the alien technology left behind. "We're learning more every day," he told General Stone during his inspection visit. "Their machines are advanced, but not magic. We can understand them now." The changes weren't just in the sky. Humanity had been transformed by their experience. Former enemies worked together, sharing resources and knowledge. The quantum shields that had protected them from the Watchers now powered new technologies. Cities rebuilt themselves using a mixture of human innovation and recovered alien science. Major Wells led the new Earth Defense Force, training people to protect their world using both old and new weapons. "The Watchers aren't the only ones out there," she would tell their recruits. "We need to be ready for whatever comes next." The quantum field generators still ran, keeping Earth partially hidden from unfriendly eyes in space. News spread through the galaxy about what had happened. Other alien species, some who had also lived under Watcher control, began sending messages to Earth. They wanted to know how humans had done it, how they had defeated the undefeatable. Earth's response was simple. We refused to submit, no matter the cost. The Watchers themselves were never seen again, at least not near Earth. But their influence had changed. Reports came from distant stars about other worlds beginning to resist their control. The species that had ruled through fear for so long now faced something they didn't know how to handle: defiance. Some humans worried about the changes Project Dead Switch had caused. The dimensional instabilities around Earth created strange effects. Sometimes objects would briefly shift between spaces, and certain areas had to be marked as no-go zones where reality was too unstable. But most people agreed it was a fair price for freedom. In the rebuilt United Nations building, world leaders discussed humanity's future. They had learned valuable lessons. We were divided before, one leader said. The Watchers thought that made us weak. Instead, it made us adaptable. We knew how to function without central control. We knew how to resist. Dr. Reed's team made another discovery in the Watcher technology. They didn't just watch us, he explained during a global broadcast. They watched thousands of species across the galaxy. And now we have access to all that data. Humanity had inherited a library of galactic knowledge, earned through their resistance. The Antarctic base became a museum, with Project Dead Switch's cube displayed behind thick protective shields. School children would visit to learn about the day humanity chose to change reality itself rather than lose their freedom. The cube was silent now, but the effects of what it had done would last for generations. General Stone retired from active duty, but he often spoke to young people about what had happened. The Watchers thought they understood humans, he would say. They studied us for centuries, but they missed the most important thing. We don't break under pressure. We transform. A new saying spread among the stars. Never push humans too far. Other species told stories about the planet that had broken the laws of space to remain free. Some called it madness. Others called it courage. But everyone agreed on one thing. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, not through submission, but through unwavering defiance. As Earth continued to rebuild and grow stronger, the changed sky served as a constant reminder. The strange colors and spatial distortions weren't just battle scars. They were a monument to human determination. They showed everyone in the galaxy a simple truth. If you push humans too far, they won't just push back. They'll change the rules of reality itself to win.